Hello, everybody. Welcome back to IM 450 AI Images. So in the recent weeks, we have discussed a wide range of topics. We've explored the history of artificial intelligence, starting with chess playing machines in 1914 through cybernetics into the internet era, and today's focus on data. And we talked about some of the fun stuff, the good stuff, but also some of the uglier stuff. And I hope that this has given you a lot to think about and contemplate. And maybe you're feeling pretty strongly about something. Maybe you're feeling a little disoriented about something. Maybe you're still working through sort of where you should be on this stuff. And it's okay to be anywhere that you are. But starting today, I'm going to ask you to start exploring some of your feelings and thoughts and reactions to the stuff you're learning through creative practice. So we're going to start with our first studio reflection. And I wanted to walk you through that before we get to our artist talk today. So let's start. This is in the course page, but I wanted to focus on what's expected, what your goals are, how to submit it, and also mention that we'll be having small group presentations. So let's walk through this together. If you have questions, you can definitely pose them to me over Discord. Of course, you can also email me. So here's how the studio reflections are going to work. Your goal is to create something that reflects on what you've learned or read about artificial intelligence so far in the readings or lectures in this class. So create something that helps you think through something that you've learned or read about. It should incorporate some form of AI, art, however you want to define AI or art. And we'll get to that in a minute. It should lead to a new question that you are interested to explore. So if you aren't feeling anything at this moment, that's okay. Maybe through making stuff, getting your hands on the mouse, I guess, or keyboard, and getting into the creative flow of working with this stuff, maybe some questions are going to emerge. And that's our hope, is that by using this stuff, you think through some of your existing ideas and maybe come to some new ideas or questions. So that's the goal, is to emerge with a new question as a result of the work that you make. So what's the format? Well, I'm going to ask you to submit a short reflection and documentation of the piece that you can present in 3 to 4 minutes. This can be a video that you record, like I'm doing here. It could be a slide deck. It could be a website or some other medium. And there should be a reflection telling us what the piece is, the issue that you're interested in, how you made the piece, and what it was like. So tell us about the tools, tell us what the machine did, tell us what you did, and then finally tell us about this part 3 of your goal. What's the new question that you're left with, that you're interested in exploring? So there's also a presentation aspect where I'm going to ask you to share your work in just 3 to 4 minutes with a small group in class. So you'll do this yourself. You probably can't present a video, but you can present a slide deck, and you can present 3 to 4 minutes of just talking through the questions that I've asked. And together, after these presentations, everyone's going to come up with some common themes and questions that you can all bring to the whole class, and we'll have a large discussion as a whole. So you'll choose a representative in your groups, and then you'll come back and we'll have a broader discussion. So I want to go into this step by step so that it's very clear. So the first goal: create something that reflects on what you've learned or read about AI so far in the readings or the lectures. So what have we done? Let's take a quick review, right? You can look at any of the lectures. You can look at any of the guest lectures, today's included, and the lectures that come up between now and the due date are also fair game. So any of these lectures, any of the guest lectures, any of the reading assignments or video viewings that you have encountered so far or by the due date. And of course, you can connect this to other ideas beyond the scope of this class. So if you want to think about the impact of this stuff on you personally or people you know, that's fine. If you want to connect it to an issue that you really care about, but we haven't gotten to it yet in class, that's fine. But I would ask you to think about how it connects to something that we've discussed so far, right? We've talked about a broad history of artificial intelligence and what it means. So there should be some way of connecting the dots. So please find some way to connect those. A couple sample topics here. This is not exhaustive. You could choose topics that go beyond this. But I wanted to suggest a couple of the things we've talked about. Just to remind you, we've talked about the history of artificial intelligence. Some of your readings have gone back to 5000 BC. We've talked about human and machine interaction and how that works. We've talked about definitions of AI. Who defines AI? What are the definitions of AI? How are they formed? Who makes those? Who writes those definitions? And maybe how are they different from definitions you might have? We talked about surveillance. We talked about data collection. These are big topics that are relevant. I'm also very keen to hear about how you are engaging with or how you feel about artificial intelligence or algorithms. Is it coming into contact with you in any way on a daily basis or not a daily basis? But what are the ways that you're encountering it, and how have some of the past lectures or readings made you think differently or revealed something that you hadn't noticed before? We also spent some time talking about how the technology works, and this is fair game. If you wanted to create something that reveals or illuminates something about a system that you're trying to use, by all means, that's a very cool use of making artwork for this purpose. Okay, so these are a variety of topics. Part of the challenge, this is a high-level course, so part of the challenge for you is how do you frame your own creative practice? What are the constraints that you want to set for yourself? So it's quite open-ended. And that's deliberate. However, there are a handful of constraints, which will hopefully narrow the field a little bit in a way that helps to make it easier for you to focus and start making something. And that is that it should incorporate some form of AI art, however you want to define that. So as I mentioned, you can define AI in your own way, and you can define art in your own way. So this might include knitting or weaving, right? We talked about these kinds of things in the history of AI and art, and we're going to hear from our guest artists today about some of the ways these connect. You can create simple computer systems or games. Some of the early AI stuff that we've seen in our historical dimension would be something that maybe some of you could recreate or produce a variation of. And that could become an artistic medium for you. That's fine. You could generate images with AI image generation tools. Of course, this is sort of what this class is about, right? But you don't have to do that. That does not have to be the way that you approach it. And we will go into, in just a moment, some of the options that are out there for creating this type of work. Now, I'm encouraging you to get into those systems and work with those systems on your own. But in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about how those systems work. And we're going to kind of walk through a little bit of how you might use them. But my sense is that if you find an interesting piece of software or an interesting tool, at this stage, you should be able to get in there and just play around with them and figure out how they work roughly. And we'll go into more detail and illuminate more of that later. So think about when you learned something more straightforward like Photoshop, right? You probably went in there and just started hitting some buttons. I highly encourage you to just do that to get started and make sense of it in your own way first. And then we can get into sort of the details of it later. But just get familiar with them. And of course, if you don't want to use these tools for this assignment, do not feel that you have to. Okay. Another option is co-writing text with some AI text generation tools. This is an image course, and so you might consider how you might pair AI text generation with something visual or experiential, right? Because I am including things like textiles as visual, right? I'm including games as visual. If you want to use a text generating tool, you can in conjunction with something visual. Now you can make that visual yourself, right? Handcraft that based on something that a text generating tool says. There's different ways to engage with that, but feel free to include text generating tools in this assignment, but please try to pair it with a visual. And I do have some caveats around text generating tools that we'll get to in a minute, some exceptions, but hold your thoughts. Here we also have a list of examples. So the first are quite directly AI image making tools. There are toolboxes for you. Runway ML is probably the one we will focus on the most in this class, that I will reference the most in this class. And so I highly recommend that you get used to it. You can sign up. It is a browser-based tool. It does cost a little bit. You get some free credits at the beginning. It does cost a little bit. But feel free to reach out to me and contact me if you're having any kind of issues with the cost of this software. The cost is not particularly high, but it can depend on what you want to do with it. And I also am aware that maybe you don't want to be spending even a very little amount of money on something like this. So that's fine. Just reach out to me. And we'll see, there are other alternatives. Hugging Face's Stable Diffusion 2.1 demo, which is linked in the course page, that is free. The resolution is not as high, but don't worry, I'm not going to mark this on resolution. When you look at the rubric, it's not about that. So you can use that to play with it and make some images yourself. You can use OpenAI's DALL-E 2. That is now open without a wait list. You can get in there and start. You just have to sign up. Neural Style is a little known tool, but it is a high-res style transfer model. So if you're interested in taking the style of one image and making it look like another image, Neural Style is solely dedicated to that purpose. You can also do this in Runway. There are these style translation tools, style transfer tools that you can play with. But Neural Style is out there. That's also linked. You do have to pay for high resolution outputs. You could sample them, I believe, for free, but you do have to pay if you want anything sort of rich. But again, don't feel like you need to submit something rich. And then finally, I just want to throw this out there that we talked about George Brecht's universal machine. That's what's in the picture. This was a response that George Brecht made in the 60s to artificial intelligence systems, right? He said, well, I don't actually think that artificial intelligence systems as we describe them, right? These models of intelligence, right? They were not called AI at the time, but these models of intelligence were not the only ones that George Brecht was interested in. He was saying there might be other ways of making sense of knowledge and making sense of the world. And so he created a box that was essentially full of random objects. We talked about this one before. And you closed it, you shook it, and the random objects appeared in a new form. And he was saying, here's a way of looking at intelligence. Here's a way of making sense of the world that goes beyond a kind of machine logic. Okay, so you can react and respond to this idea of machine logic and surveillance and stuff like this in general through absolutely analog, non-digital systems and artworks and responses. Okay, so maybe there's a performance you want to do. That's fine. I really encourage you to think as wide as you want with the way that you make tools in response to this stuff. Okay. If you have questions, again, Discord, I'm available. But let's move on to another piece. Here is the rubric. This is what I'm going to be looking for. These are the questions I'm going to ask to see how well you've answered them. So I want you to submit a short reflection and documentation piece that you can present in, say, 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes is sort of the absolute max. Your presentation, you're going to deliver it to a small group of classmates, and then I'm going to ask you to submit it for a grade. And the rubric is this. Show me and describe the project that you did. Tell me how you defined AI for the project. Tell me the topic that you're interested in exploring. Tell me how the work helped you explore that topic, right? How did you get into the topic through making something? What did you think about? How did you connect the ideas that you had to the making of a piece? What tool did you use and how was it? What was it like to use that tool? Again, does not have to be artificial intelligence software. Still curious to know what tool you used. Why did you make a box? I would ask George Brecht, why did you make this box? Right? And he would say, well, I was interested in something tactile, right? I wanted to do something that was different from a machine deliberately and intentionally. So tell me what your intention was with using the tool that you used. If you do use a digital tool, tell me why that one. Why style transfer in particular, or why did you generate an image, or why did you generate a text? What was the reasoning that tied to the issue that you were thinking through? And then what questions do you have about artificial intelligence or art, or artificial intelligence and art now that you've made this project? So what questions did it lead you to? This, again, it can be about artificial intelligence broadly. It could be about artificial intelligence and art. It could be about art in general. So it's open-ended, but I want to hear some of the questions that you have now that you've completed the project. What new ways of thinking has the project kind of helped you think about? And here's what you'll deliver. You will, again, you have your presentation to a small group of classmates. That's going to be done in class. But then I'm going to also ask you to upload a PDF of a slide deck with a script or a short video presentation. You could also give me websites or web pages. You could give me games. If you want to build like a small game or something, that's fine, but I would love to be able to play them without special software. Okay. Board games also fine. Just show me what it looks like. If your project requires some other form of submission, let me know. Reach out on Discord or email. So these are the deliverables. PDF of a slide deck with a script or a short video presentation. And your script should answer the previous questions, right? This is the rubric. So your script should answer these 6 questions. Now, before we move on, I just want to talk about ChatGPT for a minute. I'd love you to write the reflection yourself. I try not to be too aggressive about stuff like this, but I just want to flag this. There's likely to be some confusion. So first, the good news is, if you're interested in ChatGPT, I am happy if you use it, or some other text generating software if you use it in your artwork. But I'd love you not to just use it raw, right? This is about images in some way. So I'd love you to pair that text output with an image in some way, or something visual, right? Doesn't have to be a picture or a painting, right? It could be something visual. Tell me what you did with the output. If you're going to use text generation, tell me what you did with that output that you got. Okay, that has to be part of your reflection. You may not use ChatGPT or other text generating software to create your reflections. I know it might be tempting, and indeed, in some ways, this might be pretty clever to do this, but I need to flag that attempting to submit generated text is plagiarism. You are basically plagiarizing by submitting writing that is not your own as if it were your own. This is plagiarism. And it's a violation of academic integrity rules. So please don't do that. Would love for you not to do that. In addition, part of this, it's not just about making people write stuff for the sake of writing stuff, but I really want you to think about writing as a process and art making as a process. This is part of what this class is about, is how to make things with these tools, but also make sure that they say the things you want to say for yourself, right? Rather than putting in a prompt and saying, oh, the text, it generated this text, I'm going to use this. I want to hear what you think of the text, right? How do you want to use that text? How do you want to engage with that text? And this comes down to the issue of agency. Who are we as human beings, and what is the machine giving us? And how do we consciously and intentionally interact with the stuff the machines are giving us? Whether it's images, whether it's text, right? Whether it's recommendations for books and movies, or dates, right? Or music. This class is about consciously thinking, critically engaging with the stuff that machines produce, and thinking about how we can use that for our own purposes. If we go to ChatGPT and we say, what did I learn from making an AI project? It's going to give you text that you could copy and paste, but think about this as a human being. What did you do, right? What did it just do for you? Well, you supplanted a machine's ideas for your own. And I would just encourage you not to live your life that way. And I say this, I know it's a bit highfalutin, but it's also just really important, right? Do not copy and paste your way through life. This is my advice to you as human beings. With that in mind, I'm not going to grade your writing on how perfect it is, but what I am interested in is the questions that I see you asking and thinking about. So I want to see you thinking. That's the goal. Okay? So I hope this makes sense, and I hope this is clear, and I hope it's reasonable for me to make this ask of you. All right. So today's artist talk, which is going to start in just a minute, is one of the sources of inspiration you might draw from. There's also a number of artists in the class reading list. These artists are working with AI through a variety of perspectives. Some of them are empowered by the technology. Others are highly critical of the technology. Some are both, right? Some are saying, well, this is going to do some really cool stuff, but it's also doing some really nasty stuff. So choose your own position and work through your own position. Don't feel like you have to arrive at a position at the end of this assignment. That's why we're asking you to ask a question, to arrive at a question rather than a solid place where you feel 100% certain that the machines are terrible or the machines are great. What are the questions that you can ask about these machines, right? We're still in the beginning phases of this class. We're still starting to explore this stuff. So do check out those artists and try to incorporate one of them as a short reference in your work.